friends, in today's video I'm going to demonstrate a card that's based on a card I made a few weeks ago, a birthday card, and I had so much fun making this card. And the technique is using our clear blocks, some ink pads, and water. So this may not be a new technique for you, and I've actually done other videos using this technique, but today I'm doing it a little bit differently. It's really easy and I think you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So without further ado, let's start stamping. Okay, so I have my piercing mat down because that foam makes a difference when you're stamping with your clear blocks. And I also have a piece of our watercolor cardstock, and this measures 3.5 by 4 3/4. And for this particular technique, you do need to have the watercolor cardstock. The ink pads I'm using are Just Jade, Bumblebee, and Magenta Madness. So I'm going to start with the Bumblebee. And I'm going to ink up my block really, really well. Now what you want to do is take the Stampin' Spritzer, fill it with water, and mist the cardstock. The cardstock must be wet for this technique to work. Now I'm going to mist my block, and I can see I'm missing a bit of ink in the middle. There we go. So I'm just going to mist my block also with the water. And now I'm going to stamp down, and because there's water on this cardstock, my ink is actually going to flow when I lift it off. Can you see how it's moving underneath that block? And you can actually just tilt your paper and let it run, except I don't want it to run down on the side, so I'm just going to move it around and just kind of let it do its thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this with my heat tool because I want that ink to be dry before I go into the next color. I'm actually going to mist this cardstock again for each color, and you may be thinking, well, why are you drying it and wetting it and drying it and wetting it? It's just because I want my ink to be pretty much dry before I move on to the next color. Otherwise, all those colors are going to blend in together and just kind of get muddy and not the look I'm going for. So I've got my Just Jade on my block. And again, this is my B block. Not sure if I mentioned that. And I'm going to mist my cardstock again. And I'm going to stamp it kind of straight up from where I stamped it in the first place. And again, as I'm lifting it up, that water and ink is moving. And I'm just going to kind of let it do its thing, move it around a little bit. Oops. You never know what you're going to get with this. And if you want, you can take your aqua painter, get some water out, and you can actually manipulate that a little bit if you don't want straight lines. But I like how the colors are all blending into each other without them getting muddy, and that's because I had that first ink dried. So I'm actually like bending my paper a little bit, moving it around, and I'm going to dry that now. Oh, and you will notice when I heat this with the heat tool, it's actually moving that ink around too, which is awesome. I love that. You can see you get the darker shades of ink as well, just from how that ink flowed. Kind of looks like I've got an elephant or something going on. Alright, so my block is clean. Time to go into the last color, the Magenta Madness. And I'm going to ink that up. Mist my paper. And I'm only putting water over in this area where I'm going to be stamping my block. So I've got my water on there. And I'm going to kind of put it in the middle of those two spots where I stamped earlier. And again, just kind of letting that water flow, lift up. And again, I'm just going to move it around and let that ink kind of go here and there. And just moving it around. And dry it. I know some of you are looking at that like, wow, Tina, that is a hot mess. It looks like a hot mess, but if you've been watching my videos, I know I've heard that before, and you guys always come back and say, Tina, somehow you pulled it off, and I will pull it off again with this one. It will look beautiful. And to me, that almost looks like a lizard. And no, I haven't been drinking, but no, this is not going to be a lizard card. All right, so now I want to add some background images to this. So I love this stamp set, which is actually being carried over into our new 2021-2022 annual catalog, which is great. And this image here with the script, oh my gosh, love it so much. So I'm going to use that now with some crumb cake. I'm going to move that now. I don't need that. So you want to determine which direction your card is going in so that your script is going in the right direction. So I'm going to stamp it there because this is going to be the top section of my card. And this is not very dark. It's actually really quite light. I probably should have re-inked it, but it still shows and it's still really pretty. However, I do think I'm going to bring in my soft suede because I do want it to be a bit darker. So I might just put this in a couple different spots. There we go. So I have the soft suede and the crumb cake on there. Now I'm going to pull in this image from the stamp set and just add a couple more decorative bits on this card. And I'm going to use my crumb cake again, but I am going to add some re-inker. So I'm just going to squeeze out some of that ink. Always good to get a re-inker for your ink pads. Makes such a huge difference. So you've got them not only for techniques, but to keep your ink pads from being too dry. Okay, so I've inked that up, but I'm going to go ahead and, oops, wrong one. I'm going to go ahead and mist my cardstock again and the stamp. And I'm just holding it down for a minute. So you're thinking, oh Tina, that is quite a blob, and I'd be completely agreeing with you, it is, but that's okay, it's adding color. So I'm just gonna dry it, and I'm gonna bring in that soft suede, ink it up, mist it again, maybe not quite as much water this time, and stamp it right on top of that. So look at, now I've got that cool image on top of that background brown. So that's why I always say, you know, you can't make mistakes. Well, you could always turn your paper over and start over, but there's always an opportunity for you to play and do something different than what you originally planned. So I'm going to go back into that crumb cake and do the same thing that I did on the bottom, up from the top right here. Really, friends, this is just me playing. This is how I play. And I just like to see what happens, and I can tell there's a lot of water on there, so it's probably going to do the same thing that it did on the bottom. Just going to be a blob. Yep. Yay! Okay. Bring in my soft suede. Lightly mist it. And stamp down. All right, I'm gonna dry that. So I'm really building the layers with the ink, with the decorative bit, the water, and this is how I love to stamp in real life, because it's just, I don't know, it's freeing. It's you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just play, and you never know what kind of background you're gonna get. So I have inked this with the Just Jade, and I'm gonna mist the stamp with water. And where am I gonna stamp it? I'm gonna stamp it right here. Oh yes. And I'm not gonna re-ink or anything, and I have glue and stuff stuck to my nail, and I'm gonna stamp it right up there, which gives me the different shades of the green. And I think I'm gonna do a little bit right there. So again, without re-inking, so it's darker and then not quite as dark and a lot more light. So I actually want a little bit more of the leaves though, so I'm gonna repeat with the full strength ink and the water. And let's see now. And I'll just put it right there. All right, I like it. Now, I kind of think that's all I need for my background. And you're probably still thinking it's still a hot mess. Well, just keep watching. So I'm gonna dry this. I'm gonna take my water painter and I'm going to squeeze the barrel while I tap it on my finger, so that I can get some water splatters here and there. And again, this works great with the watercolor cardstock. You won't get the same effect with our regular basic white or fairy vanilla cardstock. So I'm gonna dry this now. See the watermarks now? I think they're pretty fun. Okay, so now the stamp that I want to stamp on this is from Butterfly Brilliance. And I've been doing videos with this. I absolutely love it. But I did get a second set because I'm going to cut these ones. I want to keep this image whole because of course the die lines up on it perfectly. But I know I am going to be using this stamp set, which is also carried over in our new catalog that starts in May. So it's going to be around for a while. And I just know I'm going to be using this set over and over and over. So for me, it was absolutely worth it to buy a second set so that I can use the butterflies individually, as I will with this set, or use them just as one solid stamp. I keep all these little bits because you can make fun backgrounds with those. All right, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my, oops, I missed one. I'm going to put my label on this before I cut it. I'm going to peel this off. Just peel that off like that. And peel off the bottom part. And then line up my stamp on top of the label. Okay. And that is how I put the labels on my stamps. So I'm going to save these little bits to put on those tiny little stamps later. So I'm just going to put them back on this. And in my first set, I do have, as you can tell, I can't get them off. I do have the little labels on these, so I can put those all on a block and make a really cool background. And now that I'm going to have even more, that's going to be really fun. All right, so I'm going to take my scissors now, and I'm going to work from this end. And I'm just going to go right around those stamp images. When I was had first become a demonstrator, which actually I realized yesterday, my 19-year anniversary with Stampin' Up! Is April 10th, which is this weekend. So believe me, I had no idea the journey that I would be going on by buying that starter kit. It has been absolutely the best decision I ever made. It's changed my life. But for years, when I was a demonstrator, and I know many other demonstrators will remember this, we actually had to cut all of our stamps to put them on the wood blocks. So this kind of brings back memories. So I'm only going to work with the one stamp right now that I'm using, and I will come back and trim these out later. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go around the image with my scissors very carefully. You do not want to cut into your image. That would be super sad. But you definitely want to trim this up a bit. Now I have my one butterfly image, which I'm really, really happy about. So I'm going to put this into my stamp apparatus. I'm just going to line it up with this notch up here. I'm going to put a magnet there. Oops, and put a magnet here. And I'm going to stamp this. Oh, somehow I tore off my antenna label, but the stamp is still there, so that's good. So I'm going to stamp my butterfly right there. And I'm just gonna use what am I gonna use? I'm just gonna use my StazOn, just because it's handy. I'm gonna ink this up really, really well and stamp it down. Okay, hard to see. That's okay. That's where the stamp apparatus comes in. I also just re-inked this ink pad too because it was getting a bit dry. Stamp it down. Oh, see? Do you see it coming together now? I want this to be really, really dark. So to clean this stamp, I'm just using my StazOn cleaner, which is what you need when you're using your StazOn ink pad. And you can use our Stamp & Scrub or our chamois. I'm just using an old rag that I keep on my desk, and then I just wipe the ink right off. I am going to use a sentiment from Love of Leaves. You know I love this stamp set. If you've been following me, I've done lots of videos with this. It came out in our holiday catalog and it was carried over into our current mini catalog. So I want to use Hope Changes Everything, which I think is perfect with the butterfly because of course butterflies have been transformed from little caterpillars. So there's always hope and there's always change, right? Oops, what am I doing? I don't want the block. I want to put it on here. So I'm gonna put it right above that line, I think. Right about there. So because this is a photopolymer stamp, I am using my Memento because I prefer using Memento with our clear photopolymer stamps. I find the StazOn sticks and I think the Memento ink just works a lot better with photopolymer. And I'm gonna stamp that a couple more times. The beauty of the stamp apparatus. Ooh, looks so good. I pulled in the Grace's Garden because I was thinking about putting With All My Heart right in here, but changed my mind. I decided I wanted to do a bit more stamping. I want to pull in this image on some of the corners, just for fun, just to see what it will look like. I think it would look pretty, but yeah, just an afterthought before I put this onto my card. And I'm going to use my crumb cake again. I'm gonna ink that up. Again, I'm gonna mist it with water, just a bit. And I'm just gonna stamp it right there. It just adds a pretty decorative bit. And right there. Oh yes. Oh yes. I'm so glad I did that. I really, really like that. You see how it just added a little something something in the corners? Fun, just fun. I'm gonna take my clear Wink of Stella. I'm just gonna add that to the wings. What I am going to do is take my Magenta Madness and I'm gonna tear an edge towards me. Now this used to be all the rage years ago, trimming our paper, so I'm sure a lot of you will remember doing this. And actually I want my black strip to go on this side, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue along here. What I'm going to do first actually is put the glue on this strip and put it on my card like so. And then when I put this on, I can make sure it's even around all the edges. That's a lot easier to do it that way. Okay, I'm going to take a glue dot and I'm going to put the glue dot right there in the middle and bring in some linen thread. Push that down to hold it in place, and then I'm just going to wrap this around a couple of times and push this again right into that glue dot. Okay, trim that. I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit like so and make a knot. I'm actually going to line this up with the edge over here, making sure it's even on the top and bottom, but then it also gives me that little bit of texture peeking through. So I was just thinking, okay, how do I want to finish this card? And I looked on my desk and lo and behold, there's a piece of lace. So I am going to actually add a little bit of lace along the bottom, maybe the top, not sure. Had I thought about this first, I would have put it behind this panel before I put it down, but you know, this is how it happens, doesn't it? You get an idea after the fact. So I'm going to bring in my glue dots again. And I'm just going to tuck a couple of glue dots underneath this edge. And guys, I'm just keeping this real. This is how I stamp. When I'm just stamping for fun and playing around, this is how it happens. You know, you get ideas as you're designing your card. You don't go into making cards sometimes unless you're casing a card totally knowing what you're doing. Maybe you do. I don't. For a card like this, I really like to just play and see what happens. Okay, so I'm just pushing that down onto those glue dots. Get my new scissors because they're sharper. And trim off the excess. And I really like that. So where's the rest of my lace? Let's see. Do we need lace on the top? I'm not so sure. I'm going to say no, but I am thinking about doing a second layer right there. I think that would look pretty. Okay. I'm going to bring in another glue dot. Oops, they're on here. Glue dot there. And in the middle. And on the end. I love using up bits and pieces like this. So much fun. I'm also staggering the scallops as well. So to finish the card, I want to add some sequins. So these are from the Whale of a Time sequins. They're beautiful. Look at those colors. Oh my gosh. Love, love, love them. So I'm just going to add a couple little drops of glue. You can use the fine tip glue, but I'm just going to use this because it's what I've got on my desk. Now I'm going to take my tiny pearls, and on the big sequence I'm going to just put a pearl. And for the little sequence I'm going to put a rhinestone. On my inside I'm just putting in a piece of computer paper, and I can stamp and decorate my sentiment later, but there is the finished card. That again was just an absolute I just want to play card and see what happens, but it's a really, really fun way to just create. No rules. play with the inks, let them flow, and then you can just stamp any silhouette outline or image, and it's just gonna pop right off the page. So that was me just having fun and putting the camera on. Hopefully some of you enjoyed this card and maybe got some fun little techniques, little bits from it that you can use, or you may want to copy the whole card or just play with the technique, but whatever. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Here are a couple more videos you may be interested in. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and happy stamping.